Back in the book segment tonight, we asked our pal Charles Krauthammer, a conservative who watches the political landscape very carefully, tell us what's really going on inside the Obama administration right now. Charles joins us from Washington. You know, the concept of this, and we're hoping to make it a weekly segment with you, is that you find something that the folks may not know. And I know you've been looking at President Obama saying he's going to freeze spending. So what's behind the curtain there, Charles?
Well, the reason it's a fraud is that what Obama is doing here is not just excluding all the other spending we know about, discretionary spending, Social Security, and the military, and it doesn't include the stimulus. What he's saying here is, I'm going to do a freeze on the regular departments. But what he doesn't tell you is that last year, in their first year in office, when they had a free ride in spending, they ratcheted up the spending for all of these departments astronomically. On average, over the last half of fiscal 09 and all of fiscal 10, an average of about 20%. Now, that's huge, because normally, year over year, you'd increase a department's spending by 3%, 4%, especially with low inflation. So, for example, last year alone, they increased the EPA budget by 35%. So if you're instituting a freeze, what you're doing is you're ratcheting in, you're locking in the higher spending that Obama slid in last year. Now, you could say in 08, 09, and 10 there was a recession. You had to boost all the spending, but you'd expect after the emergency you want to roll it back, but no. So what the freeze is doing essentially is the opposite of what it looks like. Instead of reducing the spending, it's locking in these huge increases that were instituted last year.
Because if he didn't do it, then the new Congress that comes in November could roll it back. Could say, hey,
exactly.
You know, we're going to, since you got such a big jump up, EPA, we're cutting you back 15% to average it out because we thought it was too much. So you say it's a three-card Monty. That's what you're saying?
It is. It's a ratchet that locks it in at artificially high levels, and that's the trick behind this.
Oh, you know, that sounds pretty devious, Charles. Are you sure the president is that devious?
Well, I hate to cast aspersions, but this is a guy who got a shock in Massachusetts, and he heard the message. The independents who elected him in 08 went 2-1 against him in New Jersey and Virginia, 3-1 against him last week in Massachusetts. He knows he has to win them back. Now, what he thinks he can do is to win them with rhetorical, you know, magnificence, which he thinks he has.
But this is sleight of hand. If what you're saying
and with sleight of hand, and
if what you're saying is true, and Charles, you did cast an enormous aspersion, okay? Because if what you're saying is true, if these guys sat down and said, we have to give the appearance of moving to the right, of being fiscally responsible. We have to give the folks that appearance. However, we're going to fool them because we're going to lock in our enormous spending for 09 in perpetuity, so that even if we do lose, the Congress can't roll it back. But you know that Congress can undo any law. So I think that if Obama thought that would happen, it can't happen anyway. If they lose in November, the new Congress is going to come in and roll back everything he does, no matter what he wants. Am I wrong?
Well, it's not so much to prevent a rollback, because remember that the president remains the president for the next 2 years. It's to establish a new baseline. Okay. So you're ratcheting up and you're freezing it in place.
But you're convinced that this is a calculated move to deceive. You're convinced of that?
No. Look, whether it's calculated or not, they want to give the appearance of being fiscally responsible.
Right, no doubt.
The cheap way to do it is with a freeze on a very small element of the budget. It's only a sixth of the budget, and in those areas in which he's already increased it radically.
I got it.
So it isn't as if he sat down and said, how can I be devious? He said, how can I get away with something that looks so good but is not really impacting the budget? After all, the net effect of the freeze is a reduction of $15 billion with a budget deficit of $1.35 trillion. It's a drop in the bucket.
Somewhere, though.
It's a rounding error.
Okay. Charles Krauthammer, everybody. Thank you. Pinners and Patriots.